For 10,000 years, a single figure has been walking toward Terra. He wears the dark robes of a dark angel but answers to no chapter. He carries a sword that should not be in his possession and a pair of ancient pistols he has never been seen to miss with. He appears in the middle of impossible events, prison breaks, assassinations, the fall of worlds, does something no one understands and vanishes before anyone can question him. The Imperium calls him Cypher, the Lord of the Fallen, and assumes he is a renegade dark angel seeking some kind of redemption on Terra. But nothing about Cypher fits that story. He is too old. He knows too much. He moves with the precision of a being executing a plan laid down before the Heresy, and he serves no master anyone can identify. Now remember that there is one legion in this galaxy built entirely on stolen identity, on twins who traded names, on a Primarch who deliberately erased the line between himself and everyone else.
The Alpha Legion had 2 Primarchs,
And the galaxy was never sure which one was real. So ask the question the Inquisition is too afraid to ask. What if Cypher isn't a fallen angel at all? What if Cypher is the original Alpharius, and he's been on his mission since the day the Imperium erased his brothers? Hold that question, because everything that follows is built to test it. And let me say at the start exactly what this is. There is no line in any Black Library novel, no codex entry, no Games Workshop statement that says Cypher is Alpharius. Officially, the leading reading is the dull one, that Cypher is a fallen dark angel, a survivor of the First Legion, chasing some private absolution on Terra. We are not going to pretend the company has confirmed otherwise. What we are going to do is lay the 2 figures side by side, the Wanderer and the Twin, and count the traits they share. Longevity, deception as a way of life, a purpose hidden behind a borrowed face,
a walk toward the heart of the Imperium that has never once slowed.
By the end, you will not have a confirmed fact. You will have a pattern. And the pattern is good enough that the audience already asked the question for us. Let's earn it. 3 names before we go anywhere, because the audience corrects the channel when we slip, and they are right to. Cypher, S-Y-Pher. Alpharius, Alpharius. Omegon, Omegon. From Omega, the last letter, the end of the line. Hold all 3. By the time we are finished, you may not be able to tell where one ends and the next begins, which, as it happens, is the entire point of the third one. Start with the figure who doesn't fit, because the official story falls apart the moment you actually catalog him. According to the Dark Angel's own records, drawn together across the Lexicanum and the Fandom Archive and every modern lore feature written about him, Cypher has been active for the full 10,000 years since the Heresy. Not a successor.
Not a title passed down a line of men.
The same hooded figure, surfacing again and again, recognized by the same robes, the same twin pistols, the same sword on his back. That alone should stop you. A Space Marine is long-lived, but he is not 10,000 years long-lived. Chaplains age, veterans fall. The Emperor's transhuman warriors are durable, not eternal. And yet here is a single-robed man threading through 100 centuries of Imperial history, as if time does not apply to him the way it applies to everyone else. The Renegade Dark Angel explanation has no answer for that. It just asks you not to think about it. Then there is what he carries. 2 pistols, a plasma pistol and a bolt pistol, and a marksmanship the records describe as flawless. Not skilled, flawless. He fires both at once into the chaos of a battlefield and does not miss. Across every account, that detail holds. And on his back, sheathed, never drawn, He carries the lion's sword. Understand what that is.
The lion's sword is the great blade of Lion L. Johnson, the Primarch of the Dark Angels himself. It was broken in antiquity and lost, and it is now, somehow, in the possession of the most wanted being the Dark Angels have ever hunted. The rumor the Unforgiven cannot bear to repeat is that Cypher means to reforge it and present it to the Emperor on the Golden Throne, to win absolution for every fallen who wants it. Here is the detail that should keep you up at night. In every single recorded engagement across 10,000 years, the sword has stayed on his back. He has never drawn it. A man does not carry a Primarch's broken sword across 10 millennia of war and never once unsheath it unless that sword is not a weapon at all. It is a key. He is saving it for a door. And then there is where he goes. Not wandering, not hiding in the dark like the rest of the fallen, scattered through time by the warp. Cypher moves with direction, and the direction is always the same. Terra. The Imperial Palace. The Golden Throne. The Dark Angels have believed him neutralized on numerous occasions. He always returns, and the trail always bends back toward the center of the Imperium. That is not the behavior of a ghost chasing redemption. That is a man with an address. Now lay the three anomalies out together: the impossible age, the undrawn Primarch's sword, the relentless line toward the throne, and ask which explanation accounts for all three at once. The fallen angel story accounts for none of them cleanly. It calls the age a mystery, the sword a rumor, and the journey a quest. Three shrugs in a coat. We are going to look for an explanation that needs no shrugs, and to find it, we have to leave the Dark Angels entirely and go to the one legion in the galaxy that was engineered, from the ground up, to make a man impossible to find. Here is where the canon stops describing a person and starts describing a machine for hiding one. The Alpha Legion, the 20th. And at its head, not one Primarch, but two. Their names are Alpharius and Omegon, and they are identical twins, the only one of the Emperor's sons ever to come as a matched pair. Dan Abnett revealed the second of them in his 2008 novel Legion, the 7th book of the Horus Heresy series. And the reveal landed because nobody saw it coming. Not the readers, not the other Primarchs, not the Imperium itself. To the galaxy there was only ever Alpharius, the public face, the one who stood in the line of his brothers at the war councils. Omegon was the shadow, the second face, the one who ran the operations the record was never meant to show. And here is the trait that matters for us. The twins were small, reputedly close to the size of a normal Astartes, small enough to stand unnoticed inside their own ranks, small enough to swap places with an ordinary legionnaire and have no one notice the difference. Hold that against Cypher for a moment. Cypher passes, everywhere he goes, for an ordinary fallen space marine. Nobody who meets him sees a Primarch. A Primarch the size of a Primarch cannot hide in a robe. A Primarch the size of an Astartes can. But the stature is only the beginning. The Legion built its entire culture around the idea of the interchangeable self. Ask any Alpha Legionnaire his name, a line trooper, a sergeant, a captain, and the answer comes back the same every time. I am Alpharius. Every warrior claims to be the Primarch. The Imperium can capture an Alpha Legionnaire and learn nothing, because the prisoner is, by his own account, the Primarch himself, and so is the next one, and the one after that. The identity is a weapon. It is a hall of mirrors with no center, built that way on purpose, because a hall of mirrors with no center cannot be interrogated. Now hold that mechanism up against the office of Lord Cypher and watch them rhyme. Because here is something most people who tell the Cypher story never mention.
Lord Cypher was not always a single being. It began as a title, an office of the Old Order of Caliban, a role one warrior was chosen to embody. And the rule of the office was this: the man who took it abandoned his old identity completely and was given a cloak and a hood to keep his face concealed forever. Read that again with the Alpha Legion fresh in your mind. A title that erases the man who holds it. A hood that ensures no one ever sees the face beneath. A role designed so that you can never be certain whether the figure in front of you is the same one you saw last time. That is not a Dark Angels tradition that happens to resemble the Alpha Legion. That is the exact same security architecture. Two legions, on opposite sides of the galaxy's history, both built around the principle that you must never be sure who you are really looking at.
And we are asked to believe that the most famous wearer of that erasing hood has nothing to do with the legion that turned the erasing of names into a religion. Here is where the records contradict themselves, and the contradiction is the case. Because a legion built on body doubles, on interchangeable names, on a Primarch who exists as a question rather than a man, that is not a legion optimized to win battles. The Imperial fists win battles. You do not need a secret second Primarch to take a fortress. What you need a secret second Primarch for is to hide a person so completely that even the people hunting him cannot agree he exists. The doubling, the I am Alpharius, the vanishing twin, all of it is a system for making one individual unfindable across centuries. And the question that should be ringing in your ears now is simple.
If you were that individual, a Primarch who, for reasons of his own, needed to disappear into history and stay disappeared for 10,000 years, what disguise would you choose? You would not invent a new one. You would borrow the only other identity in the galaxy that already does the work for you. A hooded figure, perpetually mistaken for someone smaller, carrying a name that erases the man inside it. You would become Cypher. So why would a Primarch go to ground at all? This is the part the theory has to earn, because a motive is the difference between a coincidence and a plan. Go back to Legion, and to a world called Nurth, roughly 2 years before the Heresy broke open. There, the twin Primarchs were approached by an agent named John Grammaticus, and Grammaticus spoke for something older than the Imperium, the Cabal, an ancient alliance of Xenos that had spent uncounted ages watching chaos rise and hunting for the one road that ends it.
I am not going to relitigate what the Alpha Legion chose to do with that prophecy, or which emperor they ended up serving. That is a different question for a different day, and the answer is genuinely tangled. What matters here is narrower and stranger. The twins of the 20th were the one pair of Primarchs handed a vision of the entire galaxy's future and asked to act on a timescale no mortal could hold in his head. They were made, by that encounter, into the only Primarchs in the Imperium who thought in 10,000-year increments, who planned past their own apparent deaths, who treated the visible war as a surface and the real war as something running underneath it for centuries through proxies and disguises and patience. Now think about what came after the Heresy for that legion. Branded traitor, scattered, its Primarchs presumed dead, and the death itself is a knot no one has ever untied. The records say a twin was slain at the Battle of Pluto, on its moon Hydra, by Rogel Dorn during the assault on the Sol system. But there is another tradition that a twin was slain after the Heresy entirely, by Robute Guilliman, on a world called Escrador. 2 deaths, 2 killers, 2 places, for 2 beings who spent their entire lives swapping identities and standing in for one another with body doubles. Which one died? Which one, if either, was even the real one?
The honest answer the lore gives you is that it cannot be known, and that the not knowing is deliberate. Omegon's fate in particular is officially unknown. He was alive at the end of the Heresy. As a Primarch, he is effectively immortal, and 10,000 years is a long time to walk.
So here is a being, set aside which name you put on him, who was trained by an alien think tank to plan across 10 millennia, whose own legion is built to make him unfindable, whose death is so wrapped in body doubles that even the Imperium cannot say it happened, and who, if he survived, would need to operate off every record, through disguise, for longer than any human institution has ever lasted. Tell me what that being looks like in the 41st millennium. He looks like a hooded man who never ages, who passes for an ordinary space marine, who appears in the middle of impossible events and vanishes before anyone can ask him his name. The motive is not a stretch. The motive is the most natural thing in the world. A Primarch who needed to disappear, in a legion designed for disappearing, choosing the one identity in the galaxy that erases the man who wears it. Let's go back to the relics, now that we know what kind of being we might be looking at, because the sword and the root read completely differently once you stop assuming redemption. Take the lion sword first. The redemption story says Cypher is a penitent fallen, carrying a holy relic he means to lay at the Emperor's feet, begging absolution. But look at the behavior, not the sentiment. He has carried that broken blade for 10,000 years and never drawn it. A penitent does not need to carry the sword to every battlefield in the galaxy for 100 centuries before he reaches Terra. He needs to carry it once, at the end, to the door. A man who carries it the whole way and never uses it is not carrying a weapon of war. He is carrying a piece of leverage, an object whose only value is the single moment it is presented. That is not how grief behaves. That is how an operation behaves. The sword is not Cypher's apology. It is his admission ticket.
And he has spent 10,000 years making sure it is still in his hand when the door finally opens. Then there is the route. The Alpha Legion has a signature, and the signature is this. They do not nibble at the edges of the Imperium. They strike at the center. They put agents inside the Administratum, inside the Ecclesiarchy, inside the Inquisition itself. Their whole method is to reach the heart of a thing and act from inside it. Now look at where Cypher has been going for 10,000 years. Not the edges, not the frontier, the Imperial Palace, the Sanctum, the Golden Throne, the single most defended point in the entire galaxy, the one place the Imperium would die to protect. And a hooded figure has been walking toward it, patiently, for 100 centuries, treating 10,000 years of the galaxy's tightest security as an inconvenience rather than a wall. That is not a fallen angel's pilgrimage. That is the Alpha Legion's doctrine made flesh. Strike at the center.
Reach the heart. Act from inside. And notice how the two halves of the disguise reinforce each other. Because this is where the theory stops being a list of coincidences and starts looking designed. The fallen are scattered. The warp threw them across time and space, and they surface in ones and twos, hunted, isolated, with no command and no plan. They are the perfect cover precisely because they are chaos, a population of lost men with no center, exactly the kind of crowd a single deliberate operator could move through unnoticed. A Primarch hiding among the fallen is a wolf in a flock that does not even know it is a flock. He does not have to invent a story for why he keeps appearing across the centuries, because the fallen already have that story written for them. Fugitives out of time, turning up wherever the warp spat them. He simply has to be one more hooded figure in robes the Imperium already cannot account for. The borrowed identity is not just a mask, it is a crowd to vanish into. And he chose the one crowd in the galaxy whose defining trait is that no one can keep count of it. And here is where the doubling becomes more than a curiosity. Because the Alpha Legion did not just hide their Primarch. They made the hiding into a written method, and you can read it. Rob Sanders wrote a novella called The Serpent Beneath for the anthology The Primarchs. And the thing it shows you is Omegon, the Shadow Twin, running an operation against a secret installation belonging to the Alpha Legion itself. Sit with that. A Primarch of the 20th, sending a hand-picked team to infiltrate and unmake one of his own Legion's most hidden assets. Because even inside the Legion, the right hand is not permitted to know what the left is doing. That is the discipline we are dealing with. A being who will turn his own deception against his own Legion to keep a deeper layer buried. Now ask whether a being trained in that, who treats even his own brothers as a security risk, who builds cells that do not know they are part of a larger design, would have any difficulty at all spending 10,000 years inside a borrowed name, working through fallen who have no idea what they are actually serving. The Serpent Beneath is the proof of concept. Cypher would be the longest run of it, and we know now that he very nearly reached the door. In Cypher, Lord of the Fallen, a story John French first told as an audio drama and later wrote as a full Black Library novel, Cypher does exactly what the theory predicts a center-striking operator would do. As the Great Rift tears open the sky above Terra, he and a band of Fallen escape the dark cells of the Adeptus Custodes, described in the book as the most secure prison in the Imperium, a place designed to never release what it holds. They get loose inside the Imperial Palace itself. They are hunted by the Dark Angels, by the Custodes, by Imperial assassins. And it becomes clear that Cypher's agenda is far greater than anyone realized. His goal, in the words of the novel itself, is to stand before the Emperor on the Golden Throne. He had already done the hardest part of the journey before the book even began. He and his Fallen had saved the reborn Robute Guilliman from chaos and walked him to Terra, which is how they got close enough to the throne to be locked away near it in the first place. Read that sequence as an Alpha Legion operation and every piece fits. Infiltrate by attaching yourself to the one being the Imperium would never turn away, a returning Primarch. Get carried, as his rescuer, into the most secure location in existence. When they cage you, treat the cage as a stage of the plan rather than its end. And when the galaxy itself cracks open and the Great Rift throws the palace into chaos, walk out of the unbreakable prison under circumstances that seem impossible to explain, which, you will notice, is the exact phrase the records use for every escape Cypher has ever made. The unbreakable cell did not hold him. It never does. And the only kind of being for whom the most secure prison in the Imperium is a revolving door is a being operating several moves ahead of everyone who built it. There is one more thing the novel does, and it is the thing that makes Cypher feel less like a fallen angel and more like a Primarch running a deception. The whole book is told from his point of view, and his point of view cannot be trusted. He narrates events he is not present for. He describes scenes happening far away from him as if he can see them. The reviewers who covered it all landed on the same word: unreliable, and noted that by the end, the reader has joined Cypher's hunters in simply not knowing what is real. Sit with that. The one character in the setting whose own account of himself is structurally untrustworthy, who tells you a story you cannot verify a word of, who shows you a galaxy filtered through a mind that may be inventing it. There is exactly one other faction in this universe built on that principle, that the truth is a hall of mirrors, and the man at the center cannot be pinned down. We have already named it. Which brings us to the comment that started this, and to the half of the theory that reaches past Cypher and touches the lost Primarchs themselves. Under a video about an erased sun being freed from the dark cells, a viewer named Andrew Fornes left a single line that has been sitting underneath this whole investigation. What if Cypher is OG Alpharius, told to release the subject?
26 people pressed the like button on that, and they were on to something the lore has been circling for years. Because look again at what Cypher actually does, over and over, across 10,000 years. He appears at prison breaks, at impossible escapes, at the exact moments when something the Imperium has buried is about to come loose. The Dark Angels follow his trail, and it leads, again and again, to a hidden thing surfacing. A fallen uncovered, a corruption exposed, a secret dragged into the light. What if that pattern is not a side effect? What if releasing the buried is the mission? Now connect it to the deepest hole in the Imperium's own history. There were 20 Primarchs. The records will only ever willingly give you 18 names. 2 were erased, the 2nd Legion and the 11th, struck from every archive by an edict of obliteration, a damnatio memoriae, a condemnation of memory so total their heraldry was scrubbed, their honors deleted, their very existence made a forbidden subject. The lore even shows you the silence from the inside. In Deliverance Lost, Corax remembers the Emperor naming his sons, 17 brothers, and then refusing to speak of the last 2. Only the other 2. That was all he would say. Something was done to the 11th that the most powerful being in human history would not put into words. And whatever survived of him, the gene line, the experiments, the rumor the cohort keeps returning to of an erased sun held somewhere in stasis, a subject the Imperium could neither use nor destroy. That is the thing a man who appears at impossible prison breaks might be walking 10,000 years to reach. I want to be precise here, because the temptation is to overreach, and the brief is right to forbid it. We do not know that there is a named 11th Primarch in a cell with Cypher's name on the key. The lore does not confirm it. Subject 11 is a handle for something the Imperium erased, not a revealed identity, and anyone who tells you they know exactly who is in that cell is selling you certainty the canon does not have. So keep it as the strongest reading and nothing more. But notice how cleanly the reading closes the circle. A Primarch built on deception, hidden inside a borrowed identity, who keeps turning up wherever the buried come loose, walking toward the one place the Imperium hides its worst secret. And the worst secret the Imperium ever buried is a son it erased so completely that even its god emperor would not name him. The Wanderer and the Erased. The one who cannot be found, going to free the one who was made to disappear. And this is the part of the theory that is genuinely elegant. The reason it has survived in fan spaces for years instead of dying like most of them do. It does not just explain Cypher. It explains 2 mysteries with one answer. On one side, the deepest unsolved question in the loyalist half of the setting. Who is the hooded man, and what does he want at the throne? On the other, the deepest unsolved question in the Imperium's own past. What happened to the sons it erased, and is anything left of them? For decades, those have been 2 separate holes in the lore, and the audience has stared into both. This theory runs a single thread through both holes at once. One Primarch, one borrowed face, one operation, begun before the Heresy and aimed at undoing the Imperium's oldest erasure, to reach what was buried and bring it back into the light. 2 mysteries, one walk. Now let me hold the line the way the cohort would want it held. Because this audience does not reward certainty it is not earned.
And the honest objection deserves a real answer. The objection is simple. There is no proof. No novel says Cypher is Alpharius. No codex equates them. The dominant reading, the one Games Workshop has gently steered fans toward, is that Cypher is a fallen Dark Angel, a survivor of the First Legion, and that his secrets are Caliban's secrets, not the Hydra's. The candidate identities the canon actually floats are Zahariel, a fallen sorcerer of Caliban, and a survivor of the Knights of Lupus hiding under a false name. Both are Dark Angel stories. Neither is Alpha Legion. And the company has all but said that the obvious answers are wrong on purpose, because the not knowing is the whole value of the character. Take that objection seriously and then turn it over, because the cohort already knows where it goes. You are asking for proof from a being whose entire nature is the refusal of proof. You are demanding that a Primarch, built on deception, submit to identity verification before you will believe in him. But a being like that would never submit to it. That is the one thing he was constructed never to do. The Alpha Legion's whole doctrine is that you cannot confirm who you are looking at. So the absence of a confirming line in the lore is not evidence against the theory. It is exactly what the theory predicts. If Cypher were Alpharius, the one thing you would expect the record to contain is nothing. No proof, no confession, no name, which is precisely what the record contains. That is not a knockout. It does not make the theory true. A clean absence of evidence is consistent with a thing being real and equally consistent with it being false, and an honest case admits that. But it does mean the usual demand. Show me the line that confirms it. Is a demand this particular figure was designed to defeat. So we hold the verdict open, the way the lore holds it open, and we call the theory what it is. A reading built on shared traits, deception, age, purpose, the smaller stature, the erasing hood, the walk toward the center, not an established fact. The pattern is real. The confirmation does not exist. Both of those things are true at once, and a thinking audience can carry both. So close on the image, because in the end, the image is the argument. A hooded figure has been walking toward Terra for 10,000 years. Everyone who has ever crossed his path has assumed they knew what he was. A fallen angel, a renegade, a ghost chasing a redemption he will never be granted. They were all looking at the robe and the hood and the broken sword and reading the smallest possible story into them. But a fallen angel does not live 10,000 years. A fallen angel does not carry a Primarch's blade across 100 centuries and never draw it. A fallen angel does not appear, again and again, exactly where the buried come loose, and then turn his face toward the one place the Imperium keeps its oldest, deepest secret. Whether he comes to free a brother the Imperium erased, to expose what was buried, or to end the long vigil on the Golden Throne, the through line is the same, and it is older than the Imperium's lies. The galaxy has been calling him by the wrong name the entire time. It has been counting him as one fallen man among thousands, when the shape of everything he does points at something the Count was specifically built to hide. Cypher has been walking toward Terra since before the Imperium learned to lie about its own history. Everyone who meets him assumes they know what he is: a fallen angel, a renegade, a ghost chasing redemption he'll never earn. But a fallen angel does not move like a man executing a plan 10,000 years in the making. A fallen angel does not carry the knowledge, the relics, or the patience of a Primarch. There was a legion built on the principle that you could never be sure who you were really looking at, founded by twins who spent their lives making the galaxy doubt which one was real. One of them disappeared, and a hooded figure the galaxy keeps mistaking for someone smaller has been walking toward the Golden Throne ever since.
We never lost Alpharius. We just stopped recognizing him.